What's up, you guys? Welcome back. You know what it is. It's Thursday, and we are here presenting to you Clapback Culture. What's up, Mike?
How you doing? Glad to have you in studio today.
Live and in person. What can I say?
Yes, what a surprise. I didn't even know.
I didn't know either. I just woke up and I was here.
Hey.
Ain't that about it? That's crazy. You just wake up and you be somewhere. That ever happened to you?
I mean, you also woke up in my hoodie, but you know.
I know. You know what? I swear, y'all, Mike Davis stayed copying me.
No.
I was already here dressed. He put his on when I got here. That's crazy.
I had this hoodie on all day. I represent everywhere I go.
Okay, that's true. You probably did have that on all day. Well, look, y'all, we are so glad to have you here. Once again this week, we have a good show for you. It was actually a slow week. I'm actually glad to say it was a slow week in the news cycle because nothing too traumatic happened. So look, guys, this week, what are we talking about, Mike Davis? We're going to go over Louisiana passing a bill allowing individuals to carry guns without a permit, okay? We're gonna talk about West Virginia incentivizing people with a vaccine lottery, and y'all, they giving up some weapons. That's crazy there. We're gonna talk about the NFL pledging to put a halt to the use of race norming. We'll dig deep into that. That's gonna be a good topic of discussion. Donald Trump shutting down his blog. We knew that would happen eventually. I'm sure there's gonna be some funny commentary about that. And of course, we're going to go over Joe Biden and addressing the wealth gap on the heels of the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa massacre. So let's dig deep. Let's get into it. Let's get into it.
That's more topics than I thought.
It is? You put the show together, Mike.
Don't be giving away all the secrets.
Okay. Well, look, y'all. So Louisiana's House and Senate have each overwhelmingly passed bills that would allow people to carry a concealed handgun without a permit, despite this veto threat from Democratic Governor John Bel Edwards. Let's take a look at this story.
It's called constitutional carry, and it allows people to carry a concealed firearm without a permit. Louisiana lawmakers just approved a bill along those lines. And Paul Murphy reports there are some strong feelings on both sides of the issue.
Louisiana has always been a strong pro-gun state. It already allows people to carry visible firearms without a permit. The state legislature now wants to expand the law to allow residents to carry concealed guns without a permit and without any training. Louisiana Shooting Association President Dan Zelenka helped write the bill.
I don't think that any more criminals will carry than are currently carrying. What it does allow is the law-abiding citizen to carry, and law-abiding citizens have never been a problem.
Opponents don't see it that way. In a statement, New Orleans Police Superintendent Sean Ferguson said the current laws in place regarding the illegal carrying of concealed weapons have played a major role in reducing incidents of gun violence. State Representative Royce DePlessis voted against the permitless carry bill.
We're literally saying that anyone, whether you're good or bad, you can not only have a gun, but you can carry it concealed. So it will inevitably lead to more violence.
The proposed law just approved by state lawmakers would apply to adults who are at least 21 years old and have not been convicted of a felony or violent crime. The bill also prohibits the carrying of a concealed gun while under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Governor John Bel Edwards, a Democrat who largely supports gun rights, has said he would veto any bill that ends the permitting process.
I think it strikes the right balance to make sure that individuals go through that background check, that they have training on safety and on marksmanship.
Zelenka says it would be a mistake for the governor to veto the bill.
Frankly, if he vetoes it, I'm not sure that we could ever believe another Democrat saying that they were pro-gun.
20 other states already have similar concealed carry laws on the books. Paul Murphy, Eyewitness News.
Under the current law, people have to take safety classes and pass a weapons training course, not to mention a federal background check before receiving a concealed carry permit.
Y'all, I don't know if this strikes the right balance. Does this strike the right balance? We talked about this last week. What do you think?
Well, I thought about you actually when I seen this story, because originally they had a law that required people to have training before getting their gun license. This bill repeals that. So not only do they open it up so that more people can just carry whenever, however, now they're making it so that you're not required to have training, you're not required to have background checks. It's a free-for-all for guns in Louisiana. I'm very interested to see if their governor is going to veto this bill.
It's absolutely a free-for-all, and it's one of those situations where I'm just kind of like, so if you're a criminal and you can, well, I wouldn't even say a criminal. If you are a person who is a gun owner, an illegal gun owner, I guess this is like apples and oranges. Like, it doesn't even matter because everybody will be the same across the board. So does this strike a fair balance? I don't think so. I think this is crazy. Why would we want to allow people to carry weapons that have no training, that have no idea how to operate something so deadly that can be so, like, this is just...
You're right.
I don't know, Mike.
I just don't...
It's crazy.
I don't understand who
State,
this is
second
for.
state.
Yeah, and who is it for? Like, who does it benefit? If you have regulations in place to make sure that people who buy guns go through a background check, people that buy guns, they're trained. Like, they had training in Louisiana. That's a great idea. Do you want to buy a firearm? Let me teach you how to operate it, similar to driving a car, which we just talked about last week. You want to pull all that back. Who does it help? Who does it serve? That's what I don't understand. Like, it just doesn't seem like it helps anyone. Nobody benefits.
No, and then you know what I'm thinking? You make such a good point. Who does this serve? And it serves absolutely no one and absolutely everyone, I guess. Why would we want to have more people with being able to operate a weapon legally and there is no background check? We never have to even figure out who it is. In fact, I think we should actually have people have to renew their gun license and have to go back through these checks and balances in order to make sure that they are still eligible to use their firearms. So there's a lot to be said here. Again, we are welcome to America. We are treading a slippery slope, you guys, seriously.
Yes. The NRA, they're out here. They are winning battles left and right. It's like every time we look up, more and more states are trying to jump on this train of let's give more people guns. we look at everything that happens in this country, how many times on the news we have to look at these massacres, place to place, state to state, city to city, and we got politicians and lobbyists out here breaking their backs to get more guns into our communities. It's scary.
Mike, did you see there was a shooting in Miami? It wasn't your typical shooting massacre. Okay, we're here. You guys, you have to get adjusted when you're in studio. Like, where do you look? It's a lot to do. I love it. There was a shooting in Miami, and of course we didn't pull a clip, but I do have a question for you. That wasn't the same type of shooting, mass shooting that we typically see where people are just jumping into clubs, guns blazing and killing people for no reason. However, this was a targeted shooting where 3 gunmen jumped out of a car and they shot 20 people. They killed, I believe, 2 people it was. But again, those were clearly illegal firearms. What are your thoughts around that? And then we think about, okay, here we are with a piece of legislation that's saying that would be legal for them to carry, not legal to go kill people or shoot people, but they would not be charged with holding an illegal firearm.
First of all, I would say there's a higher likelihood that, because they shot 23 people, some of those people might have shot back.
Right.
You could just carry guns and have guns. I would also add, though, that I read that Miami had 7 shootings in 6 days over the period where that shooting that you're referencing took place. So, I mean, there's so many shootings in America. People keep getting shot. I don't understand why more guns is the answer. Someone said in the comments as well, it's going to make it more dangerous for law enforcement. I think that was Mama Harriet. And that's very true. I mean, they're already trigger happy enough when it comes to the black community. Now you're going to have all these places where the police they're just going to assume that everybody has guns because guns are legal. This isn't a good idea. It's not going to be safer for our community for sure. So, I'm just worried. But back to Miami for your question, that shooting was one of many. So I don't even know how to address that.
Well, you're shooting, or you're matching fire with fire. What did they say? Fighting fire with fire. That's being said in the comments. One state that's fighting fire with fire is West Virginia. They are incentivizing people, getting their residents in the state to get the COVID-19 vaccine by offering them guns. They're giving away guns, you guys. They're giving away guns. So the drawing will run from Father's Day all the way to August 4th, and it'll include a variety of different prizes. Firearms, trucks, $1 million. I mean, this raffle is going crazy. Let's go ahead and take a look.
In West Virginia, those who get vaccinated could win some major prizes, like a chance to win a college scholarship or a new pickup truck. It's part of a new push from the state to get more shots in arms. Right now, 41% of residents there are fully vaccinated, and 51% have had at least 1 dose. NBC News reporter Gary Grumbach joins us now from Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. So, Gary, what are you learning about this new incentive plan to help get more people vaccinated? We mentioned some of the prizes. What else can folks win?
Yeah, good morning, Joe. You've heard of those more typical incentives, things like college scholarships or $1 million. That's happening here in West Virginia, too, starting on June 20th. But there's also some things that officials tell me they hope it to be a wild and wonderful twist to the vaccine incentive program here in West Virginia. Of course, hunting and fishing is big business. It's a big hobby here in the state. And so officials are taking advantage of that. They're giving away lifetime memberships, lifetime licenses to the fishing and hunting clubs. They're also doing things like giving away a Ford F-150 trucks, as you mentioned, every week for 5 weeks starting at the end of June. And they're also doing something that's a little more controversial. They're giving away 5 shotguns and 5 hunting rifles as well, just for the fully vaccinated or even partially vaccinated. All they need to do is just get at least 1 shot. Now, organizations like Moms Demand in Everytown, they tell me they're not sure why there's a little bit of a back and forth between a deadly weapon being given for a life-saving vaccine. But that is whatever the officials say, that they think they know their audience, and that's what people want. We're here in Berkeley Springs State Park. This is one of the incentives as well. You could get a weekend getaway to one of the 30 state parks across West Virginia as well. So officials are just hoping people get their vaccine for whatever the reason may be.
Y'all, listen, we were talking during the break. If this were a starter pack, I want you guys to get ready to put this in the comments. If this were a starter pack, what group of individuals would this represent? You got a F-150, okay? You got rifles.
Lifelong hunting license.
Well, what starter pack would this represent, okay? Mike, this is crazy. I think we absolutely should not be incentivizing people with handguns, rifles, the whole idea of like, this is good for people who like to hunt. I mean, listen, we should not be contributing to these pastimes. People are dying by the masses. We just reported on 23 people being shot at a party. We don't need to offer people deadly weapons to fight a deadly virus. It's absolutely ridiculous.
You hit it right on the head, because that was my thought exactly. Isn't the vaccine supposed to be about public safety? We're trying to encourage public safety with a gun giveaway. I just don't know where this country is headed. And this is coming from the pro-gun guy. It makes no sense. Like, we can't keep incentivizing guns and doing all that we can to put guns into people's hands when we're having shootings weekend after weekend. I mean, please, people, go Google these numbers. The numbers of people being shot in America, it's staggering. It's staggering, and we're moving in the wrong direction.
Yeah, we absolutely are. I mean, I think it's great that we're offering incentives for people to get the COVID-19 vaccine. It's important. However, I don't know if giving away weapons of mass destruction is kind of a part of that group of things you want to give away. The scholarship, okay, I'm cool with that. $1 million, cool with that too. I'm even cool with the F-150. I think that's okay, getting people to and from work. But I don't think we should offer weapons. I don't think we should encourage that. I mean, we're really talking about violence against animals. And it's just, we're crossing it. We're crossing a line, you guys. We're getting too far. America, we understand we have freedoms, but damn it, man, we're pushing the envelope too far, Mike Davis.
I will say, though, they are taking some steps to get a little closer to the real people who are trying not to get vaccinated. I know that in the media, they try to make it look like it's us who's out here running from this vaccination. But you can see in West Virginia, they need people to get vaccinated. So they picked really specific prizes to get the people vaccinated who are refusing to get vaccinated. And I just wonder who it is that's driving that Ford F-150 with the gun rack on their way to use their lifetime hunting license. Because that's a very specific demographic of person. It would be nice if instead of offering those people guns, the media wasn't afraid to tell those people directly that they need to go get themselves vaccinated.
I'm sorry, did you say the Proud Boys?
Oh, I didn't say it.
Okay.
That might have been Cuddy. Did Cuddy say that in the back?
Cuddy, was that you
Was
in
that
the
you,
back
Cuddy?
saying Proud Boys? Yeah, that's the Proud Boys starter pack, allegedly. Well, I didn't say it. I think that was Cuddy in the back saying that. Well, I mean, it's crazy. We could go on and on about this. But one thing I do want to talk to you guys about is the NFL. The NFL on Wednesday pledged to halt the use of race norming, which assumed black players started out with lower cognitive function. And this is coming on the heels of a $1 billion lawsuit or settlement, about brain injury claims. And let's dive deep. Let's go ahead and play the clip.
The NFL is pledging to help end the controversial practice of race norming. Critics claim race norming assumes black players start at a lower cognitive level than white players, making it harder for black former players to qualify for compensation after some head injuries. The pledge comes after an investigation on several clinicians who say they felt pressure to apply race norms by the NFL, and that when they didn't use them, the NFL would appeal payouts for injuries, often resulting in former players' claims being denied.
I'm banged up. I'm beat up. And the part that you don't see is up here. You don't see how my brain is beat up. They don't hit me less or harder because I'm black.
Former Pittsburgh Steelers defensive lineman Kevin Henry says that after retiring from the league, he began suffering from depression, memory loss, and bouts of anger. Well, in 2017, he underwent a series of tests, a doctor determining that Henry was suffering from a cognitive decline consistent with mild dementia. He submitted a claim to the NFL concussion settlement program, which was denied. The claims administrator citing issues related to validity of the tests and asserting that the evaluation used inappropriate norms.
So this was an interesting story. I actually phoned in a friend to talk about this. There was a piece of legislation that came out of the office that I work in, and it was a bill that discussed really this calculating of like lost capacity. And I thought it was so interesting that we are essentially ranking everything next to a white male and in setting the value at the white male. So if the white male, let's just say, is 100%, anything below that is like a black woman or a woman or anything kind of below that. And so we're essentially calculating that lost capacity and really deeming the white man to be the highest, earning individual in every category when he's not. And I just think it's crazy that we are saying that the black life or the life of anybody next to a white male, it doesn't have the same sense of value. So it's a lot to think about. And I see, Tracy, I see you in the comments, and so we're here for some of your commentary.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to start this conversation off just acknowledging that the NFL is a racist organization. I don't think that there's any other way to put it, and that's outside of Colin Kaepernick being blackballed. I know many people who are just boycotting the NFL and refuse to watch, and shout out to them. I still watch football, but there's no other way to put it. I mean, even outside of this, even in like the litmus test that they give players during the NFL Combine, black players always have their cognitive ability just doubted by this league, and we see it time and time again. Or times where, like, they ask incoming players if their moms were prostitutes. I think that happened to Des Bryant. And I mean, there's just a lot of weird things that the NFL does like that. But in this specific case, everybody knows about CTE. Everybody knows about the brain damage that football players face after they leave the league. And there is an insurance policy set up for players who are hurt after they retire so that they can access funds to get the medical care that they need. But when it comes to brain injuries, they're using these racial norms to determine how much mental capacity was lost due to football. Mm-hmm. And with black players, they had the bar on black players' cognitive abilities set so low that after they're hurt and they get that mental testing, their answer is, oh, well, you didn't have the cognitive ability in the first place. And that's, I mean, what do you call that if you don't call it racist? I'm at a loss for a word to actually put there. I'm very careful over who I will put that label on. And if there's a word that y'all got for me, put it in the comments. But the idea that black men are not as smart as white men and actually taking this and fighting for this idea in court, what else would you call that?
Well, they're calling it discriminatory data. That's what you call it. I mean, let's just call it what it is. And I think talk is really cheap. These are real people fighting to be served. And, you're serving in this entertainment capacity. You're already having to fight for your retirement. You're already having to even essentially fight to get on the field. I spoke to a former NFL player, one that I worked with in the past, and he basically told me that a lot of his uncles and some of his friends who are former NFL players are still having right now to fight just for their retirement benefits. And so we do know that the NFL is a racist league. We do know that they have discriminatory practices. And we do oftentimes see the black players being pitted against their white counterparts and not being treated equally, oftentimes getting to play because they understand the plays and the technique, whereas if you spend a little bit more time with the brother who had a lot of natural talent and ability, you could really get him prepared to be on the field. So this is an institution that was built on racism. It was built on the backs of a lot of beautifully talented black and brown individuals who made millions and billions of dollars for their franchises. And it's sad that we continue to see that they are being diminished each and every time that they try to get the benefits that they so deservingly need. And, it's crazy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, the disparities in the NFL run deep. I mean, from the lack of black coaches that led to the Rooney Rule, which mandates that a minority must be interviewed for coaching hires because teams were just not even giving black coaches interviews, to the fact that the NFL doesn't even hire black executives. I think we had like the first black president of a team for the Washington football team. They were called a racial slur for years and years and years until last year. But, they hired a black guy and he was the first one. And everybody's like, wow, how does that happen? I mean, in a league that is mostly black folks, not only can they not get jobs with the league after they retire, they can't even get the benefits of like the medical care for injuries sustained playing in that league. So it's like, I mean, they just continue to treat black bodies as disposable in that league, and it's horrible. I mean, even in this story and them coming out and saying that they're not going to do this anymore, I would have liked to hear more about restitution. What about the people that they already took to court and won, those players that got nothing? Do they now get those funds back? And I didn't hear anything about that doing research in this story.
Well, and it seems like there is a lot of conversation, Mike, about these players having to fight and get into a case where they're grouping together to have a stronger argument, and their families are coming in and testifying, and that's a big thing, right? And so you're thinking about, not only are you suffering from memory loss, you're suffering from aggressive behaviors. Your family has to deal with that. Depression,
yes.
the biggest one, and it makes me think of. What's the player's name who he played for San Diego? Seau. Junior Seau. I mean, that's the number one person that I think about, and his life was so valuable to his community. I mean, he left such a big, huge legacy that to think about his case and he was a franchise player. So just think about the person who's not a franchise player, the person who is just, they're just happy to be on the team, maybe even a practice player. You never even know. Someone who doesn't necessarily get as much airtime, what's left on the table for him. And so I really think that the NFL needs to reevaluate their policy. They need to reevaluate their retirement packages, and players need to be more mindful that before you sign your contract, have a good attorney. Make sure you have good representation so that you know what kind of contract you're getting into, because these are lifetime effects. And you might be excited, your family might be excited that you're, that number one draft pick, but that number one draft pick can't play this game forever. And so this is a huge, dementia and really any cognitive disorders, just they take you out, man.
You're absolutely right. And I mean, I know we got to move on, but just on your point, the lifespan of an NFL career is the shortest in all of the major North American sports. I mean, you know about the star players that play forever, but the average career of an NFL player is 3 to 5 years. So that's not a long time. And a lot of players leave before they actually get to sign that big contract anyway. And there's so much more life for these guys to live because they're getting out of the NFL in their 20s. So what are you going to do in your 20s with brain damage? I mean, it's harsh. It's really,
what
really
are
harsh.
you going to do in your 50s with brain damage? You know what I'm saying? That's still super young. But listen, someone else who might be suffering from brain damage is Donald Trump. Just kidding. But Donald Trump pulled his blog. He shut down the desk of Donald Trump. We have a teeny short clip for you because, that it's just that's Donald Trump style.
New this morning, former President Trump's new blog is shut down less than a month after its launch. A spokesperson confirming the site from the desk of Donald Trump, that's what it's called, has been shuttered and all posts have been deleted. The New York Times reporting Trump did not like the platform and had become frustrated the site was getting little traffic. The former president has been looking for another avenue of communication since being banned from Facebook and Twitter.
Short and sweet.
Just like that blog was.
Short and sweet. Donald Trump, the desk of Donald Trump was some trash when he first came out with it. I hope you get this message. I'm excited to see what you're going to come out with next. I mean, he probably was mad because, it says in the clip he was mad because he wasn't getting any traffic. I mean, that's what happens when you're Donald Trump. You know, I honestly think this had little to do with traffic, and I'm assuming, and I'm coming up with my own narrative, that this has something to do with that impending investigation, and he don't want no tracks. And his attorney said, pull the blog, bruh, because the comments are gonna come into play. Anything that he posts is gonna come into play. So I think it has something to do with that.
It really might. I thought this story was hilarious, to be honest. I mean, his blog got pulled before I even knew he had a blog. So apparently he got kicked off of social media and decided that he was going to create a blog in 2021. I mean, are people still blogging? I don't even know where to go with that besides laugh. But I do think that your perspective is interesting because, I mean, judging by what he used to do on Twitter, I could only imagine what was on his blog. And according to the reports, it was scrubbed. So it's not even like he just shut it down or he stopped doing it. They actually pulled everything that he had ever posted, which leads me to believe that what you said is probably correct. They didn't want that evidence out there, but it's just funny to me that this guy thought that he was going to go to a blog and get any sort of traffic. Like, come on. Yeah, come on, bruh.
Well, what do you guys think in the comments? Let us know. Has anyone, number one, visited the blog? I never actually have. I'll be honest with you. I've seen the highlights. Have you ever visited it? You don't have to say if you're a supporter or not. I mean, if you are a supporter, tell us what you liked about it. If you were, someone curious, what did you think about it? I think it's interesting that Donald Trump's ego continues to rise to the occasion over and over and over again. And so he didn't get what he wanted. He didn't like it. I think people were teasing him that he had a blog instead of this big social media platform that he originally promised us. He promised us a new social media platform. Mike, do you think they should give him, he has a couple more weeks until Facebook decides whether or not he can come back to the platform. Do you want to see him back on Facebook and Twitter?
I think it would be funnier if he ended up on MySpace. But I think on a serious note, yes, I do. I don't agree with the censorship. I really don't. I know insurrection. I know people, yeah, he did it. But prosecute him in a court of law, not in a court of social media. I'm not down for censorship. Today, it's Donald Trump being censored. I don't know who it will be tomorrow. I'm not for censorship ever. I think that they should let him back for sure.
Well, we know one thing, the Trump party is still strong. You see you got characters like Marjorie Taylor Greene who are still pushing his narrative. So it almost doesn't matter if this guy has a platform or not, because he still has people pushing his agenda. I do see some people in the comments saying some of the same sentiments. So
I want to know. Mm-hmm. I want to know what he's doing. I want to know what he's up to. He can't resist telling us what he's up to. If they let him back on Facebook, we're going to know all of his moves because the first thing he's going to do is put him out there. Even if you look at the insurrection, there was warnings. It's just, the FBI decided not to take these white folks seriously. That was their choice, but there was definitely warnings on social media that they could have taken heed to. So I say let him come back, and next time he's planning something, how about we take it seriously?
Yeah, it's a no for me. I think he absolutely should be continued to be censored. I don't think we should give him his rights back to Facebook or Twitter. I think that is an earned privilege in his case. However, I do agree with you, Mike, when it comes to censorship. But Donald Trump is a person that is dangerous. And again, giving him a microphone and a platform to say things that are not true and kind of get his troops all galvanized and riled up is not a good thing. And I think what we're seeing is that people, we talked about this last week about social media. People are lazy. If I'm already on social media and all I have to do is just take 2 seconds to write my dirty, nasty comment or like a post, I can do that. But if I have to travel to DonaldJTrumpTheDeskOf.com and all I have to do is, talk to only the people I want to talk to, it's a little bit of an extra move. And I think that's why he lost really some of that support, because people are not already on that platform. People have to travel out, whereas, your Facebook is notifying you, you're on your phone, you're already there for something else. And it just so happens that this content is being served to you. So I'm hoping that Facebook comes to the table with a justification as to why Mr. Trump is banned indefinitely, and hopefully we'll be seeing him at a prison coming soon.
Oh, wow. Let's go to break on that note.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.
All right, you guys, welcome back to Converge Media. We're so happy to be here in the building with my
Together.
Tuko pamoja. That's what we would say in Swahili. Yay, Omari in the back. So look, you guys, we want to talk about the Tulsa. So during an 18-hour period between May 31st and June 1st, 1921, 100 years ago this week, Tulsa, Oklahoma became the setting of one of the most devastating racial massacres to happen right here on U.S. soil. The Tulsa Race Massacre killed dozens of people, if not hundreds, and left a permanent scar on one of the most vibrant Black communities here in America. Let's take a look.
And now to Tulsa, a century after a storm of racial killing engulfed the city. The president's visit today came as the nation is reassessing race relations, past, present, and future. White House correspondent Yamiche Alcindor reports.
100 years after the Tulsa Race Massacre, President Biden came to mark one of the darkest chapters in American history.
For much too long, the history of what took place here was told in silence, cloaked in darkness. But just because history is silent, it doesn't mean that it did not take place. And while darkness can hide much, it erases nothing.
He's the first U.S. president to travel to Tulsa to do so. He acknowledged the scars seared onto the nation's conscience.
Private planes dropping explosives. The first and only domestic aerial assault of its kind on an American city, here in Tulsa. 8 of Greenwood's nearly 24 churches burned like Mount Zion. My fellow Americans, this was not a riot. This was a massacre.
Mr. Biden also met with survivors of the massacre. In 1921, from May 31st to June 1st, a white mob rampaged through the Greenwood district in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was once a thriving African-American community known as Black Wall Street. The violence killed as many as 300 Black people. Thousands of Black families were left homeless and fighting for survival, and 35 city blocks lay in ruins. A century later, Mr. Biden's visit came amid a national reckoning on racial justice in the aftermath of the police murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis last year. The president has pledged to do more to address racial inequities and to try lessening the racial wealth gap. A survey released last year by the Federal Reserve found the median wealth of Black families is less than 15% of white families. The median for white families was $188,000 compared to just $24,000 for Black families. Today, the Biden administration announced several new initiatives aimed at tackling those disparities, including an effort to combat inequity in home appraisals and housing discrimination, boosting the share of federal contracts by 50% over 5 years for small and disadvantaged businesses.
Does anyone doubt this whole nation will be better off with these investments? The rich will be just as well off, the middle class will do better, and everybody will do better.
The president also would use funds tied to his proposed American Jobs Plan, including $10 billion for community-led infrastructure projects and $31 billion in small business programs to increase access to capital. The Tulsa Centennial has also fueled a national conversation about reparations for centuries of slavery and racial discrimination.
Yeah, this is, I love revisiting the story of Black Wall Street. This is something that we talk about often in the Black community. Mike, where would we be if you think about, this is a community back in the 1920s, they're thriving. There's Black banks, there's Black-owned businesses, there's everything that you think about in terms of equity, generational wealth. I mean, they needed nothing outside of their community, and white folks came and burned it down. Where would we be in 2021 if we had more communities that were set like this?
Man, that's a heavy question, in all honesty. And in transparency, I was not ready for it. But I think I would attack it like this. First of all, the Tulsa massacre wasn't the only massacre of a thriving Black community where white folks just decided to come in and burn it to the ground. I mean, Black folks owned the property in California on the water that white people took. Black folks owned property in Central Park and white folks took it. There's massacres. I mean, look at the massacre in St. Louis, the massacre that happened in Chicago, the massacre in Springfield that led to the NAACP. They have been massacring thriving Black communities forever. So it's hard for me to say where we will be without that. I also did a very interesting talk on Town Hall on a guy that wrote a book about the civil rights movement, and we kind of talked about how different people felt about integration. That was also a blow to the Black community, where you had Black lawyers, Black doctors, and all of these Black professionals, and then boom, Black people could go to white folks now. You know what I'm saying? So like, there's so much stuff that happened that decimated our communities outside of this that it's hard for me to say where we would be outside of this one incident. But if the question is, where will we be if white folks left us alone? I think we will be thriving, and I think that we wouldn't have the gap in wealth that we have now.
So a part of what Joe Biden came to talk about was essentially closing that wealth gap between Black and minority groups with our white counterparts. And the administration is saying that they're going to take steps towards, closing that divide. Now, I don't know how true that is. I don't know if we're going to see more than an infusion of capital into minority-owned businesses. But it makes me think about that episode with Killer Mike. Did you see that? Killer Mike, where he was trying to do everything Black. So he had to, he didn't have any money, or he had money, but he could only use it at Black-owned businesses or Black-owned products. And he suffered.
He couldn't even go to sleep because there wasn't no Black-owned hotel.
There wasn't a Black-owned hotel. I mean, it's crazy. It is just so crazy. And then even with the products, remember he went into the store, he said, okay, it's a Black-owned store, but none of the products are made by Black people.
You're absolutely right.
Can you think, like, that is just so crazy.
I agree. I agree. And shout out to Killer Mike. Drink Crip Cola. If you see that in any stores,
Yes,
go buy
Crip
that.
Cola.
I think you're absolutely right. And, you know, first and foremost, I got to give some kudos to your boy Biden because he's the first U.S. president to talk about the Tulsa massacre just openly like this. And, you know, he went to Tulsa and he talked to people there and, you know, he acknowledged it. Thank you for acknowledging it. But as far as addressing the wealth gap, he didn't do a damn thing. And that's just, it is what it is. I mean, first of all, this was a Black community. Like you said, we had all of those Black professionals, all of those Black businesses, Black banks, and all of that. So where's the reparations? Because that community was destroyed and we didn't get anything. And we still haven't got anything. So if he really cared about that, then how about we give reparations to the descendants of the people who lost in that? But of course, you know, this country can't give Black folks reparations because whenever it's time to do anything Black, all we get is excuses. Even in what he said about like he has $31 billion that he wants to put into minority-owned businesses. What is a minority-owned business is what I would ask, because the term minority, that doesn't mean Black. That means Black, that means Asian, that means Hispanic, that means this, that means that. But that's not who lost businesses in Tulsa. That was Black people. So why are you gonna give $31 billion to minority-owned businesses? He also went to talk about underserved communities. And I thought that that was almost disrespectful, just the term in itself. Because what are you saying, that Black people are the only poor people? You think that Black people are the only ones that live in communities that are underserved? That's also not true. So if you give money to underserved communities, that goes to poor white people. And there's a hell of a lot of poor white people. So that's not money that comes to us. That's money, again, that goes to everybody. He talked about addressing housing discrimination, which is a good idea, but he didn't put forth any new laws, any new legislation. He's just talking about enforcing things that already exist. How about we talk about gentrification? How about we talk about the Black people and communities all around this country that got pushed out of their communities due to predatory practices? They don't get no reparations. They don't get their property back. I look at the CD right now, man, all the Black folks coming back as renters. And that's not just here, that's everywhere. So it hurts my heart that in one breath, you could acknowledge that Tulsa happened and that all of those Black people were harmed. But then in the next breath, instead of addressing the disparities to the Black community and doing something for Black, it again turns into BIPOC. And I hate to compare horrors here, but I'm just saying, when the U.S. did what they did to our Japanese brothers and sisters, they didn't come back and give reparations to minorities. They gave reparations to the living people that was in those camps and their descendants. So what happens to the descendants of slavery? What happens to the descendants of Tulsa, of Springfield, of St. Louis, of Chicago, of all of these communities where we lost things? We've never gotten nothing, and it feels like we never will.
Well, let me jump in and just say this. I think one thing that this rollout plan missed is huge, and that's canceling student loan debt, which disproportionately affects Black people. You cannot begin to address a wealth gap here in this country and in really supporting Black people if you don't talk about that student loan debt. I mean, it is something that is crippling us economically, and we're suffering. I mean, I watched a program where one former student had $1,000 a month they were paying back in student loan debt. I mean, that alone is not only discouraging young people to go to college, but it's discouraging people to even want to repay this. I mean, and it's counterproductive. It doesn't help us build generational wealth. I mean, you have this idea that you're going to go to college, get this degree, come out, get this great high-paying job, and then you can't buy a house because your debt-to-income ratio is too high.
No, you're absolutely right. And, you know, Biden, while campaigning, talked a lot about the cancellation of student loan debt, and he's backpedaled ever since he's been in office. But this is also an opportunity where if he wants to address the wealth gap, how are black folks supposed to build wealth if we can't afford education? So I think you're absolutely right with that point.
Yeah, we have to do something, Mike. I mean, we can't pretend that student loan debt doesn't affect us. That honestly is like really always the number one thing I talk about, especially with millennials like us who are not too far removed from college. And, you know, a lot of us who have gotten secondary degrees, law degrees. I know a lot of you watching, you know, have your masters or, you know, or went to law school, you know, wanting or even wanting to pursue more degrees. I mean, the number one reason I'm not going back to college is because this student loan debt on my back, who's helping me with that?
I mean, you're absolutely right. And if you, the funny thing, it's not even funny, but if you go look right now on the website of Joe Biden's Lift Every Voice plan, there's literally a link to the data that shows how lopsided the student loan debt is against black people. I mean, we graduate college with more debt. On average, we have higher monthly payments. We are in debt longer than other demographics, but all of these stats are right there on the plan. His Lift Every Voice plan that was supposed to support us, and then he got in office and decided that he's not going to cancel these debts.
So let's pull up in the comments a little bit, Mike. I'm having a little trouble reading it. Pull us up in the comments, Cuddy. What's our audience saying? Let's chime in, you guys. Mike can't read it either.
I can't see that far.
Oh my God, because you don't have your
can't see that
glasses
far.
on. No, read it to us, Cuddy. We can't see.
Watch the video that where Biden said in a secret meeting there will be no actions taken regarding reparations.
Thank you, Darnell. I seen that same thing.
Hey, shout out to Darnell too. Thank you for sending in a bunch of stories. You know,
Close it down.
Yeah, it's always great. You guys continue to send us in. We are looking, we're watching.
Real fast too, man. Shout out to Leon. Leon, you sent me something. I'm looking into it. I got to share it with Julia though before we bring it to air. But I appreciate you.
Okay, I love. You know, we got active people, man. Give us another comment, Cuddy, please.
We got Shelly Stockman. She said need to elect more black legislators since Congress holds the pursue the strings.
Come on, Shelly. Welcome back to the show.
I agree.
I mean, and we're actually on with one of the black legislators. Shout out to Tracy G. Jackson, Dr. Jackson. She actually is one of the people who wrote the bill that we talked about on the NFL bill, where
that's what's up.
Yeah, about the discriminatory practices and all of that. So I've seen some really good legislation. But you're right, we do need more people at the table to write legislation that speaks to what we're talking about. In fact, I watched something today. There was an incentive program for vaccines. They're rolling it out in Atlanta, and it's like the shots at the barber shop. And of course, it's a little bit of pandering, you guys. But again, I mean, why not, if you want to have, you know, intimate conversations about the vaccine, why not talk about it when you're in the barbershop? Because you have an intimate relationship with your barber or your hairstylist or your braider or whoever. And so they're offering kind of this program in Atlanta to do that. So again, we need to have our legislators in rooms like that, having conversations with the people, and not just in the room, not just in the office, but in the community. I think that's so important that we get to the grassroots of these conversations.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I do think that representation matters as well. So I think that it's an approach where we have to try to do everything. I thought it was powerful when those members of the AAPI community stepped up to Joe Biden and said, we demand representation. They demanded that. Shout out to them. We just need black folks to be able to get in the room so that we can make those types of moves too, because I would like to see some demands to support the black community. And I'm all for solidarity. Huge fan of the Black Panthers. I mean, I grew up in the shadow of the Panthers. I've met many former Panthers, had conversations with them. So solidarity is key. It just hurts me whenever something black turns into something BIPOC. But we got to get out of here. I'm getting the signal, so.
Let's get one. Do we have time for one more comment?
We got this one from Doris. He said they throw crumbs, then watch
Yo, she's talking about Seattle right now.
Hey, Dora, who sent you, sis?
Look, she brought it right back
Speaking
home.
them facts.
Yes.
That is true. I mean, they give you crumbs, and then we all fighting for it. You know, they talk about that crab in a barrel syndrome, but she's right. You know, and one of the biggest things I always talk about and have been talking about in my peer circles is that, you know, we don't need to be offered a seat at the table. We need to create our own tables and have everybody pull up a seat. So if you have a business, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're thinking about being an entrepreneur, if you got a hobby, if you have a talent, if you just, you know, have something to say, create a table and bring people around and have, you know, conversations, intimate conversations, and just see what's out there. I mean, everybody has an opportunity to kind of build and bridge off each other, and we need to have more community voices. So shout out to Converge for being one of the best media companies that allows people to pull up at the table, gives everybody a platform, man. You know, it's always a blessing to be here and alongside so many creatives, man. For real.
Yeah, for real. It's always nice being around here, man, walking in and seeing Besa and Jake and Trey. And we got Julian here today, Cuddy in the back, man. We got these Converge hoodies. Go buy
the Converge hoodies.
Support.
Well, look, y'all, this is Clapback Culture. It's been a great Thursday. Mike Davis, where can they find you when you're not here, brother?
South Seattle Emerald. You find the Emerald, you're going to find me. I'm also on Twitter at RealMDavis.
All right, you guys, and I am Jules Jessie. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Treasure of JULES. You already know what it is. So again, that's our show. We love y'all. It's Clapback Culture. Peace.